All right. Oh.
He said he was back. I don't.
Oh, okay. He's back.
Okay.
And here we go. Greetings and welcome to episode number 17 of You Had Me at Halo, where we talk about everything past, present, and future of one of gaming's most storied franchises. Today, our primary topic is going to be taking a step back and evaluating the journey for Halo Infinite so far from prior to the July event last year through that event and all the updates. We're just going to do a state of the Halo show to really just casually talk about some of the things that we are most excited about and maybe where we have some concerns. We're also going to take a few minutes to recap some of the audio stuff from the last show. And yesterday we had a Ask 343 event, and they really just recapped a lot of the things that they updated 3 weeks ago. So we'll touch on that again. But before we do, let's first meet today's Spartan team. Joining me first up is Spartan Mike, aka Kage Maru. How's it going, Mike?
Good. My mouse didn't work there for a second, but good now.
All right. Next up, we have Spartan Jesse, aka Don Cabeza. How's it going, Jesse?
I'm fine, I guess. I mean, life is life. Things are so. There's this guy Shakespeare.
All right, I'm gonna cut you off until you get some more energy. Just kidding.
Coming at you live, Spartans. How's everyone doing here in Xbox?
All right, that was
and let's throw it over to one bad mother.
Next up, Daniel, aka Nadian. How's it going, Daniel?
Hi, I'm doing great, guys. How are you doing?
All right, everybody's just a little off today. Next up, we got Spartan Austin, aka Proven. How's it going, Austin?
I'm doing great. I have a lot of energy right now, as you can hear.
Okay, good. Well, it's a little bit better than Jesse's initial, but anyways.
Suck my butt.
All right. And unfortunately today, Spartan Soul Blazer is out. He's preoccupied, so hopefully he'll be on our show again in a couple weeks when we do the next update. So let's go ahead and begin for our first topic. I really just want to quickly go back and after yesterday's Ask 343, if anybody on the panel had anything jump out to them from that event, and maybe more or less after having a few weeks to kind of let the last update sink in. Is there anything that you really after that time, or as you kind of dove back in, was there anything that really, stood out to you? Mike, I'm going to begin with you and just, let us know like what aspects from the audio are really kind of lingered with you the most after that last event.
Wait, are we talking about the Ask for 343 yesterday or the update?
Either one. They're tied together. They're same stuff.
Yeah, the big thing for me was the emotional tracks. It seems like they really, really have. It seems like they really have the tone and mood carrying whatever scenes are being played out in the game, like to the point where, and that's not even just like the quote unquote emotional moments, but they talked about how it's reactionary at the Ask 343. So I'm assuming that means that when you run into, you get jumped or you get into a firefight, the tempo or the music changes into something quicker paced. So the point when you think about how they don't even want to release any more tracks because they're worried about it spoiling the game. I really like that secrecy. I know that some people might be annoyed, but I kind of miss the old Halo secrecy type angle that they used to do. Like instead of it just being bombastic and out there, I like to have. I mean, all of that kind of centers around that sense of mystery, right?
And we don't want to have another Qui-Gon's funeral track like episode 1. Call back.
So yeah, that was one of the major things that stuck out to me. Like I really loved all the 3 tracks that we've heard so far. And if I don't know, everything, even though we're not hearing it, everything sounds good. What they're saying.
Yeah. Well, and we did get to hear a little bit, right? Like I actually went back and I listened to the 3 tracks after the fact, and you could really feel like a distinctness between them. And I agree with you, Mike. Like when they're talking about like that just the variance in terms of the tones. I mean, it's one other thing that does communicate is you can get an idea what the tone of a game is going to be like by or a story by the music. Sometimes that dictates it a lot. So when they tell you there's going to be just kind of a wide range there, then that hopefully means that the story is not going to feel as one note, or I don't know, like Halo 5 kind of felt one note-ish.
Mm-hmm.
All the way
well,
through.
Especially when it came to the audio presentation.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and you think about it too, like every Halo just about had, you look at 2, you look at 3, you look at Reach, you look at 4, they all had those sweeping emotional highs, but
Mm-hmm.
also those lows when somebody important to the story dies, right? Obviously, 4, there's several moments of that kind of thing, and in 5 there really wasn't. It's like you guys said, it was kind of flat, kind of one note.
Yeah.
And I mean, like you said, when someone dies, or just the calmer moments, and
yeah, Wreckage from Halo 4, that track is amazing. It's the one right after you wake up in the beginning after the after the crash. That's a fantastic track.
Yeah, no, I mean, you guys bring up good points, and as I'm kind of thinking about this up and down, hopefully that just means they whack a lot of characters early on, including the Prometheans, and take them out with them. All right. How about Daniel? I know you kind of chimed in on that. Was that the number one thing that stuck out to you, or was there something else?
I think it was tied between that and the threat prioritization for the acoustics model. But yeah, I mean the music, kind of like I was saying before we started, it's just nice to hear a direct confirmation that we are going to be getting a little bit more dynamic sound, and it's also adaptive too. I mean, obviously that's something that most games have now, but they mentioned WYs and a couple other tools that they're using to make it so that the tracks are directly adaptive to your actions and to what's happening on screen. So it's not just the orchestration, but how that orchestration is either sped up, slowed down, or pitch tuned to whatever's going on, or shifted into a new track, and that's really cool.
Cool, yeah, and I think you already stole mine, but yeah, I'll also flip it over now to Jesse, and I think you're kind of on a similar wavelength. But what was kind of your thoughts as you let the last event kind of sink in and listen to the Ask 343 yesterday?
The threat detection not just being around you, but being what can potentially do the most damage to you at that time was really interesting. Where they tried it with the really being focused on position, and instead of just that, the focus shifted, and they found it much more useful when the thing that was going to do the most potential damage to you is what raises the highest in, they call it the bucket, but without completely drowning everything else out, which sounds like it potentially could be a really cool use of the Dolby Atmos that they're going to be doing, because I normally use DTS:X with everything, but if that game natively supports Atmos, I'll definitely go with that one. And the ones that do, like the Division 2 and Gears 5, sound incredible with it.
Yeah, and especially if like this one's going to be a little bit more vertical too. I think that's maybe one of the areas that could be a little underrated is combining Dolby Atmos with with a wider environment and that threat detection and some verticality included in some of the environments. Daniel, I'll go back to you. I think you had something else you wanted to add in there.
Yeah, adding on to Jesse's point, it's really cool that the audio stuff that we talked about last week was super nerdy, and I was totally into it. And it's cool that they're, it's like this incredibly layered audio system in that it's got all the positional, all the material-based, almost ray traced sounding audio systems. But then, like Jesse was saying, it's got the threat prioritization. But even like they mentioned the footsteps of your player versus, the players next to you that are on your team are going to be different levels than the footsteps of your enemies. And so, I just kind of imagine it like you are a Spartan and you're getting, how your onboard computer would automatically reduce the sounds of your footsteps or your teammates compared to those that are considered threats. And it's just kind of cool how everything kind of ties into the mythos, to, kind of like Halo 5 kind of made you feel like a Spartan, quote unquote. I feel like this one's going to make it sound like you're a Spartan.
Yeah, those are some really, really good points, and
if I could,
yeah,
if I can add on to what Jesse was talking about with the whole Atmos thing. I didn't think about it until he was talking about it, but when you think about Halo, and you mentioned verticality, I mean, they purposely lower the reticle so you can basically view above you more so, right? Like there's a vertical angle, let's say, to how the game even presents how you view the world. I mean, if there's any game that's going to take advantage of the verticality of something like Dolby Atmos, it's going to be Halo.
Yep. No, exactly. Yeah, and I think I never even thought about that stuff, before just these last few minutes. But as you've been describing that, and then you mentioning Atmos, and somebody who took a look at Atmos, and I had decided I didn't have the room for it, but with the headphones, that could really change the immersion experience.
Absolutely.
So yeah, some really good points. Proven, I haven't asked you yet. What is some of your thoughts? Anything really jump out to you, either 3 weeks ago or with the Ask 343 event yesterday?
I think yesterday they talked about a lot of cool things. I think they talked a lot about 3D audio, and they said specifically when you capture the flag, like it actually, like a sound emanates from the like when you capture it, like you kind of hear it from where it's coming from. So I thought that was actually interesting. One point someone made, I thought, kind of went unnoticed a little bit, where the guy kind of hinted at the idea of maybe customizing your Spartan voice a little bit, because in Halo 5 it was kind of like generic, it was like generic voice acting for like your Spartans, and I think he was kind of hinting at the fact that maybe you'll be able to customize it. He didn't really go too much into detail, but I'm really interested to see how that pans out.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I haven't heard that brought up too much, and it's one thing I'm excited for. We'll get into this when we get into our next topic, but I do think that Halo is going to be a very highly customizable game, and I'm anticipating some next gen, like some really next level options there, and that would be that's a really good detail to pick out there, and that'd be something that nobody else has really done. Let's see. So, has anybody else had any other thoughts about that, or want to elaborate on any of the points we talked about so far?
Well, it's important to note that the announcer is back. So the same voice, as always, is back. And I think further on to what Proven was saying, to the the voices of war that we got in Halo 5, where we had Nathan Fillion and some of the other voice announcers being able to swap out. It doesn't sound like that we'll have a direct analog to Infinite, but they did mention that they were going to have some surprises on that front specifically going forward. So I'm not sure exactly what that means, but it's just interesting.
The thing for me is like my favorite voice in all the games is obviously like Cortana, Master Chief, because those are the two most recognizable voice actors. So I'm just hoping that if I could just hear Cortana doing the announcements or something like that, I'd rather that than anything else, honestly.
No, that's cool. Sorry, just are we good on the technical stuff, you guys? Real quick check on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Cool. All right. No, I appreciate that, Proven, and just kind of like one of my final thoughts. When I went into the audio stuff, I didn't really think that'd be my my bad, because I'm not an expert in it, and I was obviously, as I mentioned before, it's always a really important part of every experience. To me, I feel like the music usually does make the story. A lot of times it has a real important weight to it. Like when I think about the old Star Wars movies or, Indiana Jones or anything like that, it's always like the music that always stood out to me and the sound. But in terms of describing it, it's never really been one of my, or knowing how to pick out high quality versus not high quality. That's definitely not my forte in it.
You're not going to be buying those $500 Bang & Olufsen.
No, I won't be. I won't be spending $500 on headphones.
Could we get some of those for the team?
Yeah, we need to for the review. You know what? Send them to somebody who's not an expert and see if they can really tell the difference.
Well,
that's a good idea.
That's kind of the amazing thing about audio, though, is that one, I think it adds to the experience more so than the visuals. And I don't think many, maybe people may not agree with that or they do, but even if that were the case, I don't know if people realize it. Like, it's one of those things
it's one of those intangible elements that can either completely ruin something or elevate it.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, even if you're not an audio expert, you know bad audio when you hear it, or a bad audio experience. Like, it's one of those human nature things where that produces the uncanny valley effect, but in an audio way where like you don't have to be like an animator expert, but you can tell when something's off. And I think it's the same thing when it comes to audio, because you can point to games that have amazing audio experiences. You can point to movies that have amazing audio experiences, and they stick with you, and they definitely add to the experience. But even if you're not an expert in audio, you don't get that same reaction from games or movies that don't give you that audio experience.
Totally agree. And any of you guys, anybody here get a chance to play through Hellblade with headphones on?
Yes.
Yeah.
The binaural audio.
I did the surround sound first, and then I went back because I know it said to, it said to use headphones, but I was like, no, I've got a great surround sound system. Yeah. If you go back with headphones, it is such a revelatory experience. It is.
I played that game. I tried like 2 or 3 times, and I did the same thing that you said, Daniel. I was like, I just have a 5.1, but it's still good sound. It's still a good sound system, and it just didn't click with me. And then I kept hearing about it. I'm like, all right, I'm going to just try it with the headphones once, and then I ended up playing straight through that thing, and that game was so immersive. Just when you get that really up close and personal. Surround sound, and then you start to hear those little details. So I was thinking about that because, I'm thinking about this with, again, the threat prioritization and just like that attention to detail. I'm pretty excited to see what this thing sounds like, throwing some good headphones on, and maybe this is the game to get the $500 headphones for. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, even the Xbox wireless headsets. I mean, I've got 7 different pairs of headphones, and for $100. Those things are tough to beat. I mean, they do require a little bit of modification to the settings, which you can do directly from the EQ, but they sound fantastic.
Yeah, so good note. So that's going to be fun to try to just see what it feels like. And I feel like the first time I played this, based on everything we've heard, to play it with those headphones on. All right. See, anybody got anything else you want to add to that before we go to our main topic of today?
I like turtles.
Yeah, okay, well, we're going to skip that one. All right, so let's kind of take a step back. Obviously, last year when
I'll be too far away from my
yeah, just I forget. Jesse takes everything very literally. Okay, Jesse, take another step forward, lean back into your mic the way you know how to do it. So last year, leading up to the July event, we heard a lot of hype behind the scenes about Halo, and then the show kicked off with Halo Infinite. And as everybody remembers, so we watched the playable demo. I feel like there was probably mixed feelings is probably the most accurate way to describe how a lot of the community felt at that time. And then we got introduced to the Krug meme shortly after that, and all hell broke loose. And shortly after that, we decided we were going to start a show. We were still pretty excited about Halo. We've obviously everybody here is big fans of the huge fans of the franchise, and we decided we were going to do a show leading up to the launch, which was going to be in the fall. I think a couple episodes in, we found out about the Halo delay, and we learned that we had about a year and a half lead up to the game. They went quiet for a little bit, and then they started to bring out some updates, and we got our first new screenshots. I think maybe that was a turning point for some people in the community. And since then, obviously, we've been getting the monthly updates. So what I wanted to do is just get everybody's feelings on where we're at today, like what you thought in July, and kind of like take us on the journey to where you're at today. Have you been feeling the same the whole way through, or did things really change all the way through? And then we'll kind of come back around and we'll talk about what it is that we are most excited about, or what we liked about the updates so far, things that are most exciting to us at this point, and then the thing that maybe is the area that you might have still some concerns on. So we'll go ahead, and I think I'll kick off this round with Jesse, with you. Let's kind of get your thoughts from then till now.
Pretty much the actual reveal, the gameplay looked great. And that was the main thing. People on YouTube and influencers and everything were like, wow, this looks great. Kind of surprised at the graphics and some of the bugs and stuff. Then they put out the screenshots, and then someone got the screenshot of Craig, and at that point, the entire focus just shifted to graphics and, just how rough how unfinished it looked, and how, well, this is an actual demo, not something they crafted for months in a huge crunch effort for E3. So you saw it both ways, and then eventually you get we are going to delay it. Things come out, you don't know how it's going. It's kind of like this was supposed to be the centerpiece for launch. So at that point, it's like, oh, I just want to play it. It looks so fun. I don't really care about the graphics that much. But so you get it. You get where they're coming from, where it's their showpiece for their new hardware. Yeah. All the stories and everything's come out about how far behind the tools are and how that became a meme. But it's borne out to be true as things are maturing with a brand new setup. Like PlayStation 5 was more of an evolution of PlayStation 4, as where the going to the GDK from the XDK has, especially during a pandemic, it's taken its time. It's been a slow start, but the screenshots they've shown recently, the openness they've had talking about the game and how they're doing everything, setting expectations for what the monthly updates were going to be properly. Like, yeah, we're not going to give gameplay. That's something you'll see at E3. For me, it's been really love the gameplay reveal. I understood people making fun of the graphics. They definitely didn't look done. Understanding the delay, hoping it wasn't a year, hoping so much that I talked myself out of it being a long delay. Understanding why, and really looking forward to what it is now that we're going to get to see in just under 2 months, hopefully, if E3 is around the normal time.
Yeah, I mean, those are some really good points, Jesse. So let me ask you, like, in terms of the updates that have happened so far, is there anything that's really stood out to you, or is there any sort of like takeaway from a high level, or anything that's just really specifically just stands out to you as as the type of Halo player you are?
The first time they get the time they want, because they got it in a sense for the engine update. Like, she came to him and said, please, I need time for this engine update. And now it's like, okay, you need time. We're in such a healthy position compared to when 5 came out and a few years after that, where take your time. Not an easy decision, but we're not going to put something out if it's not ready. And that feels really good for how they feel about their future, especially because people call them the Forza Halo Gears company, and they are absolutely not that at all right now. Their biggest game is Minecraft, and it's going to be for a very long time. Everything else is there to not sell consoles. Consoles and games coming out are there to get people to sign up for Game Pass. So it's a very different dynamic that hopefully is just healthier for AAA development for a game like Halo.
Yeah, no, really good points. Let me kick it over to you, Daniel. Let me get some of your thoughts, and like what are some of the things that really have stood out to you? How have you felt about the communication and the updates so far? Has it been enough, not enough, or just or more than you expected? Like what's your overall takeaway?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a really loaded question because I wasn't here with you guys when everything started out, and there's a lot of points that Jesse hit that I absolutely agree with. The reveal. Last year was weird, right? I mean, it was in the middle of a pandemic that most generations don't live through, especially one that affected this industry so much. I mean, I know working in systems and computer administration, as an engineer, we had to shift everything, and it threw projects off months, if not years. So when we even got a show last year, it was something to be thankful for. And so I knew that we're probably going to get something builds old and all that kind of stuff. And the gameplay was fine, but there definitely was a little bit. And like Jesse, I'm not a huge graphics guy when it comes to Halo, but there definitely was a feeling of being deflated a wee bit because of how it looked compared to what we'd seen and what we'd been promised with Slip Space and Next Gen and all that kind of stuff. So, I think the year delay was a necessity. I think that the transparency has made me feel a lot better. I think that the screenshots that we've seen definitely showcase that the graphics aren't that they took all those things to heart, and it's looking a lot better than it was. I hope that we can see some form of multiplayer soon. I think that's my biggest concern, just because we don't really know how much they're going to weave between OG Halos and 4 and 5, right? So I think that's the only area that I'm quote unquote worried about, and it's not so much worry so much as it is curiosity.
Right.
And but yeah, I mean, it's a crazy time that we're living through, and the fact that Microsoft, especially knowing that this is their baby, that this is their their biggest property, that they were outside of Minecraft, that they were willing to take the necessary time to delay it, despite what that may look like from a PR standpoint, I think is admirable. And I think that we've seen articles about how the transparency of 343 is something that should be modeled after with the rest of the industry. So I think it's been good. I think there's still just, I think we're all kind of itching to see some actual gameplay and how all the learnings and all the the communications are actually going to be bled into gameplay, and see how that's actually adapted.
No, some really good points. Proven. What's your thoughts, man? Like what was like the main takeaway for you from the reveal, or even before the reveal up until now?
So I remember like the 7 days before the show, like it was all like really perfect. Like they did the countdown, they got everyone excited. Like I remember the day before they showed off the cover art, and that was honestly like the most excited I've been for Halo since like Halo Reach. Just the cover art, because I literally looked at the cover art. It's like, okay, they fully understand what they're doing, and like I was super excited. And then I watched the gameplay, and overall, like I thought it looked pretty good, but like it wasn't it obviously wasn't like it didn't like blow my mind away. Like I was expecting a little bit more for a game that it was revealed in 2018. So at that point, maybe my expectations were a little bit higher than what we got. But like it didn't look bad by any means. It just didn't look super finished. But I mean, ever since then, like I've been super impressed with the way that they've been very transparent. Really, since December when they announced the delay of the game, they basically communicated with the fans, and they've answered basically every question we've had so far. So like, basically the last piece that we need is to see gameplay, which obviously we're expecting at E3. So
Yeah, no, good point. So Mike, what's just your overall, high level takeaway from things?
Not to be stereotypical, but it was kind of a roller coaster
Yeah,
because I was hyped up for the gameplay just because I wasn't really expecting the game to match the initial tech demo because we all know what tech demos are. But the first the trailer that had the trailer that's basically the intro of the game looked amazing. So that gave me compared to that, the gameplay reveal itself kind of fell short.
I feel like that was a mistake actually. Now that you bring that up,
What, the tech demo or the intro?
The intro, because the intro almost gave you chills, and then it opens up to the gameplay. Like, oh,
yeah, and so like fine, like, and then there was speculation was running rampant, like it was 2 months old, but then we find out it was like 2 weeks old, and then like it's just like, and the gameplay, like Jesse said, looked great. I was happy with the gameplay. Graphically, it was underwhelming. And then just the more we found out, the more concerning everything was, because it wasn't running on a Series X or an Xbox One. It was running on a PC. And then we find out that in a way the game wasn't going to be content complete at launch because they couldn't confirm certain game modes or certain things were going to be there at launch. We knew ray tracing that wasn't going to be there at launch. And so like I was just getting all of these flashbacks to like say Halo 5. And
yeah, I think it was the foundational elements that were missing, or the the development problems going on, that was more concerning than the graphics to me.
Yeah. Like the graphics, the graphics weren't concerning so much for me. They looked fine, and I thought maybe the more troubling aspects or the lower quality aspects were going to be ironed out at launch. It was just what that kind of hinted at. And like it just seemed like they were, how did I describe it to someone back then? Like it seems like they're trying to land a plane as they were putting it together or something like that. And I did not.
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of concerned with how it was going to launch. And then thankfully it was, and I think I tweeted out to like not Aaron Greenberg. It might have been Bonnie Ross and Phil Spencer. Not that that makes a difference, but it was like, this should be delayed. And
Yep.
so, but then it was delayed. I was happy, but and we've all speculated about when it was going to be delayed. I think most of us were leaning towards the springtime.
Yeah, we all said like May at the latest.
Yeah. And then there we are with the fall, which,
Yeah.
but you know what though, like the whole roller coaster ride, to me, everything that they've done since the beginning of the year, or I should say since that last blog post or first blog post at the end of December, has done nothing but build confidence for me.
Yeah.
So like it was, I was hyped, and then I was kind of let down or concerned in ways, and then there was just that radio silence, which I don't blame them for being radio silent. And then at the end of December or whatever that was, it's been this nice upswing where everything has been just a positive mood or move, and it's been confident and transparent. Like I'm feeling good about it.
No, Mike, I feel that I probably went through much of the same experience you did. But before I get to mine, I think, Proven, you were trying to chime in there. Were you wanting to add anything to that?
Yeah. I was just gonna say, I think the thing was because we all kind of thought it was May. Like I don't know if that was wishful thinking or I honestly didn't expect them to delay it to fall. I thought, okay, they're gonna want to get this game out as fast as possible because like it was already kind of a at the time when they delayed it, it just didn't look good for them to
Right.
delay the game. So I was like, okay, they're just gonna want to, fix the game really quick. And I think that the reason that they gave it a fall release is kind of just to ensure that like there's no way it falls out of 2021. Because I think if they let's just say they said, oh, it's coming out in April, like there's a chance it could have gone delayed again. So I think they just
Yeah,
delayed it
they've
as
been very conservative as a company on their timelines on
yeah,
anything, and that is also including the fact that you still can barely get either of the new systems. So,
Yeah.
like Phil
yeah,
originally had said, oh, we're hoping to have things better by April. You didn't hear that by the time this month hit. Instead, you start hearing things about how consoles and GPUs and CPUs probably won't be better even through next year.
yeah.
Yeah, like I think you guys bring up a really interesting aspect of the journey with the delay, and I think that's really one of the key moments in everything. I probably am closer to Mike in terms of the roller coaster for me. As we talked about before, Halo's my favorite franchise. I was very excited about the just the Xbox platform coming into this generation, even before the whole Bethesda thing. And at that time, we didn't even know about it at that point. But again, knowing that Halo is the thing that's representing the brand, you expect that this is going to be the showpiece, and there was all these rumors it was going to be, and so like that day when they showed it, whatever day that was, like what is it, like July 23rd of last
Yeah,
year
I
when
think
that
so.
when it first came out, I was very bummed. In fact, I think even though the show was pretty solid overall in terms of just reveals, I felt pretty, I wasn't really in the most positive frame of mind because I already knew like a lot of those games are going to be there. But just the way that Halo showed that day was really disappointing, and it was concerning because you knew, hey, it's going to be the launch title. There's not, and I do understand, development. A lot of times there's a lot of work done in the last 6 months, but I was, still pretty concerned that there was enough time for this particular game, and it was really important for it to, to stick the landing. And so it's interesting because we started the show after I did watch the video a few more times, and I'm like, all right, once I got past the graphics, the gameplay was solid. It showed a lot of potential, and I think that's where I kind of left it there when the gameplay. I know a lot of people have said, hey, it looked really really good. I thought it looked solid and showed a lot of potential, but really until you know what the developers are really going to be focused on for the bigger picture for the rest of the game, it's hard to really make a final call on that. And I think we did get some more information on that as time would go along. But really, one of the biggest high points for me, and this is going to sound really contrarian, but was the day they announced the delay of the game. And I'll tell you the reason is I've been on the Xbox platform really since it began, or almost since it began. I came on, I think, 3 weeks after it launched at the OG Xbox, and it's been my primary platform since. One thing that we've known from Microsoft when it came to their big tentpole fall releases is they usually don't get delayed. They'll come out half baked if they have to, and they'll give us the rest of it later.
Yep.
And that was a thing way before Game Pass was a thing. That's just I think if you've been gaming on Xbox long enough, that's almost something you expect. Well, they'll fix it later. and so, like this idea that they were going to, that they're going to delay it just seems so far-fetched, especially Halo, especially because they're really focused on, driving a launch, driving Game Pass. And when they delayed it, to me, that was like this turning point where it's like, this is different. They are like
this is a new approach that signals something potentially really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was gonna say I don't think that's contrarian at all. I think I wasn't around when we first started this, obviously, and I was grateful for the delay because a lot of the same reasons. OBM, because one of the things too is that like you said, there is a little bit of a pattern of some of their bigger games or even the smaller ones kind of launching and then getting fixed later. And this shows that Phil's Xbox and Matt Booty's is an Xbox that is okay to push out content to make sure that it's right for launch, that it's high quality, that it's fully feature complete, And in a couple of years, if not by the end of next year, we won't even notice a big deal when there is a delay, because they've got so many studios that they're going to be pumping out content left and right. So, but it's good to know that even when it's a situation like last year where they have a new launch console and they do not have a big title, they're okay with still launching the console so that they don't sacrifice the quality of one of their big titles.
Yeah. That I've thought the same thing, that if they're going to delay Halo at launch, that speaks for everything regarding the entire generation. We're not going to see another State of Decay 2. We're not going to see another Halo 5. Hopefully, in the sense of not a game being pushed out before it's ready.
Yeah, they'd be the exception instead of what was almost the rule for a few years there.
Right.
Yeah. So, and again, going back to kind of what that journey was, when you think about Halo, it does represent the brand, right? And I think that's why that was so disappointing. It was because you were just expecting kind of the WoW piece, and at least I was. And again, maybe that's my problem, my unrealistic expectations, whatever. But that's just where I was. I was expecting that to knock our socks off, and at the and at the time it really didn't. But when they did that, it just gave me a different confidence in the brand, and in a way it just says that like I had less concerns, because it's like if they're willing to delay Halo when they have nothing else at launch, and they have this gap. When I say nothing else, I'm being a little bit hyperbolic. It's obviously they had some good titles, but there was nothing that was like that tentpole. This is your tentpole AAA first party game, that captures the mainstream. And if they're willing to do that at the launch of a console, when they're really trying to push Game Pass, then to me that was just a sign. Like that was probably the most extreme situation you'd ever delay a game in, right? So we got there, and then they told us it was going to be delayed even further, to November, which was beyond what most of us expected. Again, I was really happy about that, just because this is one of those franchises that we know is going to live on for a while. And really since then, I think with these updates and the way they've been doing it, they've been, I think, as transparent as you can be when you're not showing gameplay, and a little bit more open.
We
They're
got more
taking
screenshots than I thought we would. There has been stuff.
Yeah, no, there definitely has been. So, and they've really touched on. So I mentioned earlier, like the gameplay, it looked good. It looked like it had potential. I wasn't really on the extreme that said it, looked amazing. I thought it showed a lot of the old, a lot of the sandbox potential, but without them really showing us enough to know that it was like the trend or the focus. It was, it was hard to be all in on that. But as they've gone on, that it seems like Sandbox has been like they've been talking to the classic Halo fans, even though it still has Sprint in it and it still has, some extra stuff in it that, a lot of the classic fans don't like. They really been trying to speak to those like core foundational pieces that show that they understood what made the OGs so great. So that's kind of like where I, leave it is, the focus on the Sandbox to me has been, overwhelmingly positive. It shows that they get it. When they talk about like the variance in tones, it shows like they get it. And so that's that. If I were to like do a high level takeaway, to me, it would be that this is a team that actually gets Halo. And I know some of you guys are not going to like this because I know Daniel and Jesse, you guys really.
Five was more of a departure in the classic sense with having the teams and stuff. And I do agree with you that they want to evolve older Halo and less of what 5 did, because 5 played great, but it felt different in that campaign in a very big way. And Infinite feels like we want to take what made Halo great and known, at least for the campaign we've seen so far, and evolve that instead of rewrite it so much. But at the same point, I do think it's going to be a modern game.
It's a marriage of the two, and I think keep in mind, I'm a guy who loves every single Halo, and I can give you explicit reasons why.
Even
each one,
ODST.
Even ODST
What?
is amazing. Shut your
Yeah,
mouth.
what?
Yeah, what do you mean
Any game that
even?
has Adam Baldwin voice acting Dutch is already
Mine is
just starting
him.
at
Shut your
handicap.
mouth. No, they're all great, but I think that 5 definitely I think is the easiest to point to elements that and I don't think the team never got it. I don't think they. I think the team, because a lot of the team is still the same. I think they've always loved Halo, but it's always been this balancing act of building new while respecting the old and bringing in all those elements because there's a reason they brought in elements from the books. Those things sold millions and millions of copies, and there are people like me and Jesse who love the mythos, who always felt a little bit shunned by Bungie because they frankly didn't give a shit, and so it's always been this weird balancing act, and I think and I'm hoping that this is the you know the embodiment of the marriage between old and new and game and mythos. And I don't know, I'm maybe call me an apologist, but I always felt like it was a job I would never want to take over. It's like J.J. Abrams taking over Star Wars, right? The new trilogy is the most maligned, even more so than
Well, it deserved
episodes
it.
1, 2, and 3. Yeah, well, potentially well deserved, absolutely. But it's like, but could you imagine the pressure of having to take on something like that? And that's kind of what 343's been doing,
And
arguably well.
the new
for
Halo,
years.
yeah, what they ran into was like when games were smaller, things didn't take as long back then. So when you reboot late in the process and have to sort of duct tape everything together to get a finished product, it's more noticeable, I guess you could say, especially when your main competition in Sony and to a lesser point at this point, stuff like Call of Duty that's constantly pumping it out, like they are known for their polish and having things that feel coherent all the way through. Even
But
if
they're
gameplay
also
isn't, their gameplay is not always a priority. They just have this huge level of polish on them. And Halo had the gameplay, but that campaign was very uneven and it was very noticeable how much was just not up to the same standard.
Well, I mean, to be fair to 343, the whole, how do you change things without alienating your fan base thing was something that Bungie even struggled with in the later entries. I mean,
it's damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah,
Like,
they've
Reach was attacked so hard when it was new. It's
Yeah.
been recently that people look at it and go, "Oh yeah, this is actually a really good game."
exactly,
Yeah,
and I mean, I think they even said the same thing regarding Halo 3.
Oh yeah,
And
it's and Halo 2. It's literally been every single Halo. Like if you go back, if you find the archives for the original Bungie forums, you will see the same thing that we are talking about today back in Halo 2, back in Halo 3. I mean, I remember I was reading those forums. I was jumping on them every day that I could, and I think I would bet you money in 5 years people will say the same thing about Halo 5. If not, I mean, I would take that bet. I could find you more than a dozen influencers
For that,
today.
I'm going to give this show a down vote. No, I'm just kidding.
no, like I mean, on that note,
guarantee you.
I don't think Halo at large, I don't think Halo fans are opposed to change. I think it just depends on whether or not they consider it a change for the better.
The problem
And
is
It's a
when
very
Halo-
vocal minority that is just wants to crap on everything.
But I'm not talking about that minority. I'm talking about, I mean, when you look at Halo 5 specifically, there are fundamental issues with that campaign in terms of gameplay design.
Oh yeah, I don't think anybody's disagreeing with that. I was going to say really quick, I would say that Halo fans are not a monolith, and that's the greatest disadvantage and also advantage that the fandom has, because like I said, there are people who've only played 1 or 2 games who've read the books. Like again, I could find you several major influencers, if we want to call them that, on Twitter just the other day who were talking specifically about how Halo 5 was their first game. Halo 5 was their favorite, even if it wasn't their first, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's important to remember that I don't speak for the fandom. None of us do. And so while I understand that there is a large portion of people who, may denigrate 1 or 2, but there's always been that tone of when a new Halo comes out, oh, I hate this. It's not like 2, it's not like 3, it's not like 4, or whatever.
Yeah.
That's not my point.
And
Well,
that
No, I was going to say, Daniel, you brought up a really good point. I know, and I don't think it's being an apologist to say that they have one of the most unenviable tasks in game development, trying to balance all the fans in Halo. And I've been that snarky fan myself over time. I bitched about Halo 2 when they did the dual wielding, and then but obviously then I complained about Halo 4, and then I complained about Halo 5, but it's still my favorite franchise. I will say though, and I guess where I would push back is I don't think it's necessarily being against change, because the original Bungie Halos did have change, and people did eventually, like you were saying, did embrace them in hindsight. I do think there was questions, and this is part of this is just because the studio running it is now called 343 and not Bungie. There was questions about whether they understood what made the franchise great, and so like that's probably again going back to our takeaways since July and some of the updates, is like, yes, they are going to still go on with this more modern version. It's going to have sprint. It's going to have extra stuff in the game. But it does sound like they keep going back to talking about the sandbox, the tonal things, the artistic differences, like the simplification of it. They're at least acknowledging what made the originals great, and they're kind of trying to move forward with that in mind. So to me, that does inspire a lot more confidence, because, like I said, I know what you said there, that I agree that they had a lot of people from Bungie, but just because they had people from Bungie, you still never really felt like whoever was creatively leading the projects really got it. At least I didn't. So, and that's where I always felt like they were just somewhat disconnected. But now it does feel like they get it, and so they're at least trying to now bring in some of that and change with that in mind. But what were you saying, Proven? I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Yeah, I think the thing that's interesting about 343 is that they've really gone through like an evolution. 'Cause I remember when Halo 4, like I was super excited for that game, and I kind of ignored a lot of the so for the Halo 4, like I liked the campaign. I actually thought that was pretty good, but like I thought the multiplayer was awful. But there was a lot of red flags. Like there were just some quotes that came out of 343 that like made me think like they're just purposely trying to like
chase
like
trends
go
a little
the
bit.
other way.
Yeah,
because
I
I
agree with
remember.
that.
So Frank O'Connor, like this quote is a little out of context, but like I remember he said, "Oh, we hired people who hated Halo," and what he meant by that was we hired people that didn't like absolutely love the franchise, so they kind of hired people who had differing opinions of what Halo could be.
Yeah, I mean, it
So
was kind of like that they're trying to build a super group, right? I mean, because you had Ryan Payton, I
yeah,
think, from Konami. You had, I mean, Corinne Yu, who is amazing in terms of what she did with lighting, but that was kind of like the main goal. It seemed like with 343, so much so that, like you said, they built a super group that did some great things with technology, but kind of chased a lot of trends, and
yeah,
kind of like
sorry, I remember I watched because like a couple of months ago I watched some of the Halo 4 Vidocs, and like there were some quotes in there where people were like, our goal with 343 is to build the best studio in the world. So like they were really ambitious, but it kind of felt like they kind of brought in like some of the best developers in the world, but it didn't feel like they had too many Halo, like quote unquote Halo fans. So that's kind of why Halo 4
The
like
approach of trying to get dissenting opinions really led to them twice in a row having to reboot things, because nothing was like there wasn't a lead voice to make sure things stayed on track. So they had a bunch of really talented people who had differing opinions on where things should go, and so in the end they just lost too much time to actually get things done.
Too many cooks in the
scheduled
kitchen
run.
wanting to make completely different meals.
yeah, and
there's some.
Go ahead, Proven. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I was to say I don't remember specifically who it was. So I don't want to. I'm pretty sure I know who it was, but I remember. So for Halo 5, they had a pro team, quote unquote, who were basically like a mix of old Halo pros and some other people who like playing multiplayer, just to specifically build the multiplayer. But after he left, I remember he did an interview where he was saying that for like the first couple years of Halo 5's development, like they had basically, it was like a 50-50 split where like they just
Yeah.
couldn't agree on a lot of the sandbox items. Like there were people in the team who were like, sprint sucks, like sprint can't be in Halo, and then obviously there's like the other side who's like, yeah, sprint belongs in Halo. So like even through Halo 5, it felt like they made a game like overall. I think the game turned out like well for the multiplayer. It didn't, obviously it just didn't seem like they had a cohesive vision throughout most of the game.
You're talking about the Josh Holmes interview, right? Like
No,
I don't. Sorry about that.
no, that's one of them. But I remember someone from the pro team, like
Oh, okay.
he said like that even in the multiplayer team, it just like they had so many different ideas of what Halo could be, and like that, what Daniel was saying, like that's one of the things that's great about Halo is there's so many different opinions of what it could be, but that's kind of a problem when you have a developer who can't get on the same page.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the things that used to stick out to me, and I know we're probably chasing some squirrels here, but so we'll get back on that in a minute. But that is something that really stuck out, and maybe it isn't. Maybe this really does tie back into some of the themes because they do seem very focused now. But I do remember listening to Josh Holmes' like interview once he left 343. He was on a podcast.
Mhm.
I don't remember the podcast. I looked for it and I could never find it again. But he was basically being pretty open. I don't think he directly threw anybody under the bus, but he did say they spent, half the development for both 4 and 5 really kind of arguing, not being able to settle on a direction. 5 was supposed to be a much bigger game than it ended up being. And at the end of the day, like they were kind of in a crunch to just get something out. Which now this goes back to the time thing we were talking about. So they didn't really get that extra time to fix that. And, it sounded like from a leadership standpoint, they just never became a cohesive team for 4 and 5. And, one of the things I take away from, what I've heard about some of the updates right now is that they do seem to be more on the same page with like this vision of, again, they keep talking about sandbox, really going back to some of the, the things that that bring back the feels for the classic games in terms of the tone, in terms of the variance, in terms of like the pacing. So it's like they kind of understand the. It's not like obviously this is going to be modern. It's not going to be Halo CE, but it has a lot of the same heartbeat or like maybe the same foundation that went into that.
They know how to word it so people who like Halo think this is a Halo
I
game.
don't
Without
buy
it feeling,
that.
I'm not saying it's not in it. I'm saying they know how to talk about it to highlight the things they're bringing forward. I'm not saying they're not doing them, Mike.
Well, that's what you insinuated before. So
the things that people want.
It's all a facade.
I think with MCC, they've spent so much time kind of going back into the foundation, into the DNA of that to make it the game it is today. It sounds like the 5 years that they've had to build the engine, to work on MCC, kind of like what OBM was saying, is like it's very clearly a different team in terms of the objectives, the goals. I think, aside from the back and forth between conflicting ideals, the other problem was feature creep. You look at hell, even MCC, that game was originally intended to just be Halo 2 Anniversary, and then it became, hey, we can do all these other games in addition to, and remaster those in addition to remaking Halo 2. And 343's, I think, even if not more as much as of a problem as it was to have those conflicting teams within the team, their problem with feature creep just bleeding into becoming bigger and bigger. And I'm hoping that this game has kind of alleviated some of that because of that extra time, so that they could set forward, okay, here's what our goals are, here's what we're going to achieve, and if we want to add stuff later, we'll do that after launch. But we're going to have a feature complete game to start.
The big change for that was, it's like, okay, you've got it in a place where you feel okay releasing it, but if you had more time, you could actually make it exactly what you want for once, which Halo never had. Because like you look at what has this extra year been, it's been finishing everything they wanted that they might have had to cut. Like Staten's talked about ideas they've had, things they wanted they couldn't really do. Getting at that level of polish, getting into the development of it in a way where they can go over, like, yeah, we know Halo, we love Halo, Halo MCC, we've gotten in such a good place right now. It's sort of become our test bed to give you confidence that we understand this franchise.
Yeah.
And for the people who want old Halo, they have made Halo the Master Chief Collection something incredible. And their goal is to, when they're done with it, it goes to the community for modding, and it can be this thing that lives forever that way, so that it's separate and not constantly looked at for the new game. It just exists healthily alongside it. They have this ability they've never had with a Halo game before to really take their time, and even though they look so damn tired on that Ask 343,
Yeah.
Oh my god,
COVID
yeah.
life, man.
Yeah, they all look like they're at the end.
they're with
If I had my
they're
camera on, man, that's
working-
how I look.
Yeah, that's
they're-
why we didn't go camera today.
They're working under a Microsoft that is into giving employees time and taking and not forcing things. Like the whole company is like, okay, you can all work at home, you all have time. Let's not be dicks.
So I do want to kind of move things because I know we're like over an hour and we actually got some questions coming in, so I want to make sure we get to those. But so I want to just really quickly go around. So number one thing that you are excited about now after the updates. So we'll go ahead and we'll start somebody different this time. Daniel, how about you lead off on that? What's like the number one thing that you like about what you've heard so far that you're excited about?
I mean, I think the only thing that I was really worried about was the graphics, and I think that the screenshots and everything that we've read from the technical directors and engineers seems like they're taking that to heart. I being a soul of old and new, I never really worried about the gameplay, but it is nice to hear that there are definitely, especially story elements, that they're going back to hearkening to the old system, old games, rather than Halo 5, which I think we all agree was not, from a campaign standpoint, was not.
Yeah,
great.
campaign. Multiplayer is a different story.
Fantastic.
I play a lot of that. Let's see. How about you, Proven? What's your number one thing that you are, as somebody who likes the classics, what's kind of like the thing that stands out to you that you're most positive about right now?
That I'm like most positive about or looking forward to?
Yeah, but I guess either. You can tie those in.
I mean, I just want to see multiplayer at this point. Like I have an idea in my head what I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be a nice blend of Halo 3 and Halo 5 kind of. It's not going to be Halo 1, 2 or 3 multiplayer, like I know that, but I also don't think it's going to be Halo 5 where like I think it's going to be a nice blend of kind of the modern movement but not too much. Like I don't think you're going to start with armor abilities. They've said as much. I'm just interested to see the map design because for me, the biggest thing I haven't liked about 343's games is I haven't loved all of their maps. Like they've made a couple really good maps, but they've also made a couple of not good maps. And for Halo 5, it felt like half of the maps were just, the remakes, or what are they called? Where they basically made the same map.
Reskins, mirrors.
Yeah. So I'm hoping for Halo Infinite, like there's a bunch of variety. It's not just the same type of map, but reskinned. And obviously I'm hoping that they make a couple good big team battle maps because I don't think they've been able to do that except that one in Halo 4. I'm forgetting the name of that one, but
yeah. So would you say that still maybe your bigger concern is how they handle that stuff?
I'm weirdly confident, and I don't know why because I haven't loved like their even like I like Halo 5. I think it's not my favorite, but I'm just weirdly confident they're gonna nail it this time, even if it's not like it's not gonna be 100% what I want. Like obviously I expect that. I think they're gonna do a good job of blending a lot of what the old multiplayers did well, also what the new ones did well.
Okay, now Mike, how about you? What are you most excited about right now since the updates?
The campaign, easily. I mean,
what about it?
It's I mean, it looks like they're finally balancing a good act between the old and new in the sense that if they're also bringing back stuff that really hasn't been in a Halo campaign since probably the first game. There's been touches of it in 3 and 4, like we mentioned before, like with the mystery and stuff like that. But I mean, it just really everything so far about the campaign looks good. I don't hate the sprint. Like, I'm fine with the sprint, but even the base movement speed is fine. It looks fast. It's not like Halo 3 where you're like a snail.
Yeah.
Like,
going real slow.
yeah, like I was just playing Halo 3 not too long ago, and it's kind of crazy how slow you move in that.
Slow, yeah.
But just I can't say that I've seen anything about the campaign that I haven't liked, and the fact that you know you add in the audio like what we were talking about earlier, and you add in what the sandbox that you've mentioned plenty of times, that they finally seem to get the Halo sandbox. And then on top of that, the stuff that we've heard about, like different changes of time of day. I mean, it seems like they're bringing some modern design choices to the benefit of the campaign in a really good way. Like, obviously that all matters on the execution, but their intention is like awesome.
Yeah. Jesse, how about you, man? What's the number one thing that if you had to pick one, what is that number one thing you'd focus on?
Their talk about how it's the like smaller hub open world gameplay that gives you options if you want to go and do other stuff. Because one of my favorite things is just playing the campaigns of Halo, and if I can play them in a way that isn't always just the same linear mission over and over again, but it's this area that I can go and kill this Promethean knight, because Prometheans are in the game. I'm sorry, Obiam. And it says kill. You know, there's these areas on the map I can go to, and I can go back after I get to the next area, and I have unlocked more abilities, and that lets me get to somewhere in a Metroidvania style that they talked about.
Prometheans will only exist in the tank level. That's the only way I'll accept.
I definitely think they're going to go back to the less is more approach with things like the knights.
They're going to get genophage or something.
Variety. Yeah.
Mike, is this you that I'm watching playing right now? You're really struggling.
Yeah,
We've had several comments about that.
You know what? Now that you mentioned that, I have to ask, like, what does it mean that this looks like Mike gameplay? What does that even mean?
Well, you can see if you
bold.
just go up and the gameplay feels bold.
I know, I saw that. It took everything in me not to bust out laughing at that part, by the way. But
oh man, yeah. So you already stole mine. I think usually when I go last, it's mine's stolen by now. But for me, it's Sandbox. I've always been the gameplay over everything else person. That's why I replay these games. I didn't, just being really candid with you guys, I didn't really feel like 343 either understood the sandbox or they just didn't get the time to properly build it out, because that aspect, I replayed both of their campaigns along with all the other
4 was very corridor and 5 was very inconsistent. They had some excellent levels and
they did.
These weren't done.
There was a couple of levels that felt like they were done from like the old teams, like some areas that felt really good, but overall it didn't feel like they got it. So the fact that they keep talking about it over and over and over again, it's like, okay, you guys have obviously had, Halo fans in your ear, and you obviously are, probably got tics and Tourette's and, whatever, dealing with the community about it. But they definitely get, I think, what makes the gameplay work. So it's not necessary. And I know, like, a lot of times the old school fans, which I'm one of them, focus on like the lack of sprint and things like that. But I do think sometimes we conflate things. Like it's more of a correlation. It's like, we had, when Sprint was introduced, we lost a lot of the sandbox, and I do think there's some harder elements to maybe balance out when you introduce new abilities and more stuff to the game. But it does at least appear like that's been just a huge part of the focus. So that's what I'm most excited about in terms of seeing all these updates. Now, I do want to move on to some of these community questions, unless one of you guys wanted to kind of pipe in on anything there. Are you guys ready? Community questions?
Ready?
Let's do it.
All right. I know I mentioned we'd get to some of the things we were concerned about, but maybe they'll pop up in here, and I want to make sure we get through the show, and then we can save whatever we didn't
I'm
get to.
concerned they haven't shown any gameplay.
And we will probably see that in 2 months. So Dante Clark asks a good question. He says, assuming the multiplayer is awesome, which, like I said, 5 was pretty awesome, but the single player isn't, does that break the game for you? So I think that's a really, really good question. Let's go ahead. All right, go ahead, Ben. You want to start?
Sorry, I'm thinking out loud. Depends. If the story isn't great, like it'll be a bump. Well, just depends what he means by the campaign isn't great. Does he mean the entire thing or just like sections of it?
I mean,
because I just have a feeling that it just looks like it's gonna be so fun to play that I'm expecting no matter what that the actual gameplay of the campaign is gonna be great, and I think the level design is gonna be good. I don't know for sure.
Yeah, if it's a fundamental thing that's broken, like fundamentally, there's just something not great about it versus it's imbalanced or something they can change. I think that's a big difference.
Yeah, so like, can you guys still hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you. I think Jordan dropped.
Okay.
He's back.
Wait,
I heard that that clicking off, and I thought I went away. Yeah, like when you talk about the multiplayer being awesome, single player. First, as much as I complain about the Halo 5 campaign, I still have Halo 5 as my game of the generation because I played the multiplayer so damn much. So it'd be disingenuous for me to say that, but I do think from a larger view of it, for Xbox, for Halo, the campaign does need to be great. And
with the free-to-play structure, even with Game Pass, going free-to-play and not needing gold for it, multiplayer will matter more in the end still.
It will.
The campaign's definitely going to matter, but yeah, it's a different dynamic than before.
I agree with that. I do feel like though, even if the multiplayer is amazing, even if it's the best one, if they miss on the campaign again, I do think there's going to be some impatience.
Yeah, it definitely wouldn't be good.
Yeah. I don't like this again with Halo 5. I just kind of overlooked it because I got so hooked on the multiplayer. But I do think even myself would be, we've now waited a while to get back to a really,
great
Halo
campaign.
4 was
really
4 was 9 years ago.
Yeah, I actually think
I don't even I know a lot of people put Halo 4 up there, but from a standpoint of like that replayable Halo, it's been longer than that. I think you have to go back to the Bungies to get the really, really replayable, which again, I'm less concerned about that because of all the talk of Sandbox. And that's why I think every single week I mentioned that's the number one thing that stands out to me that I'm excited about. What were you saying, Mike?
I actually think that it's going to be more detrimental to the reputation of the studio and the game itself if we have another Halo 5. Because I mean, think about how much Halo 5 is looked down upon. I mean, granted, even the most Halo 5 haters will admit that the multiplayer is great because it legitimately is a great multiplayer. But a lot of the negativity is surrounding the campaign, and for good reason. And if we have a repeat of that again, that just is going to look so much worse, in my opinion. Especially since this they've had so many callbacks to just the good Halos, including Halo 4. And like campaign wise, I mean. So I would it break the game? I think for the people that look for Halo, that are fans of Halo for any other reason other than the multiplayer, I think it would. It would for me. I like the multiplayer when it comes to playing with friends, but I'm definitely a campaign co-op type of person first. When it comes to the other aspects. Like what just real quick, like what Daniel said earlier, kind of hit the nail on the head. Where how not divided, how diverse the fan base is. You have the people that care about the story. You have the people that care about Forge. You have people that care about the multiplayer, co-op, campaign, stuff like that. at least when it comes to people that care about the campaign, yeah, that most definitely would break the game for them. I would think.
Well, and I do think so. Well, actually, let me get to Daniel because we haven't let him speak on that, and I'll jump back to what I was going to say. Daniel, what's your thoughts on that question?
Yeah, I mean, normally I would say it would not break the experience for me, or the game for me, because like I think about Halo 5 and I beat it once solo, and then it took my wife like 3 years after it released to finally want to play it with me, and that's the only times that we've played. That's the only times I've played the campaign. Like I go back to every other Halo. It seems like at least once a year, but not Halo 5 for campaign. So normally I'd say no, but I think because of the time between 5 and the amount of work that they seem to have kind of put into understanding the Halo experience, I think it would hurt the reputation of the studio, but I don't think it would break the game necessarily. I mean, like you, OBM, I've got hundreds of hours in 5, and it's one of those games that I play at least every other day, it seems like, but that's all Warzone and that's all competitive and PvP. So normally I'd say no, it wouldn't break the game, but I think it would damage the reputation of 343 quite a bit. I think if they didn't take if all that time didn't ultimate build a better campaign.
Yeah, I think it's a lot more important. And Jesse, I mean, you did bring up some good points about the importance of multiplayer. I do agree that it is going to be a long term. That's really going to be the key thing about this game. But Halo is a little bit different. It's interesting because you might only play the campaign a few times, or in relation to multiplayer, it's going to get a lot less engagement, but it really does define like the brand. It like the lore and everything else kind of really builds up like I don't know if you want to call it the mystique around the franchise. And so without that, I don't think they can really goof it. And right now, again, I feel pretty good about it, but to answer his question, I don't think they can afford to this time. I think they have to hit a home run with the campaign, and I don't even think that's if it's not ready, they need to delay it another year. And not that I think that's going to happen, but that's really how important I think it is that they nail this one.
Yep.
Yeah, I think for me, the thing is, like, I'm weirdly confident in this game. I don't really like everything they've shown and said outside of the July demo has been like amazing. So I'm honestly expecting this to be their best game ever, and possibly up there with like Halo 1, 2, and 3 for me. But honestly, just like the base level, they just need a solid campaign, a solid multiplayer. Like I think the problem with Halo 4 and 5 is it's like if you took the campaign from Halo 4 and if you took the campaign from Halo 4 and put the multiplayer of Halo 5, then people would think, oh, 343 is actually like really good. But the problem is every time they release a game, even with Master Chief Collection, there's one like super glaring issue. So I just think they just need to like combine everything and finally release a game that like there's no glaring issue.
Agreed.
All right. So any other final thoughts? We'll move on to some of the other questions.
Quick one from me, which is that as much as we all talk about the base multiplayer and the base campaign, depending on how they do Forge in a creative mode, that'll probably end up being the biggest thing for not Halo fans to make the game far bigger than it could be otherwise. Because my kids barely play Fortnite Battle Royale. They play Fortnite creative mode and all
Same with my son.
Minecraft.
Roblox, Fortnite, like everything ends up coming back to how can I goof off and have fun with just my friends, because this Battle Royale is driving me crazy because it's so hard to win. So when you have creative mode, it really adds to helping make something very popular. Might not matter that much for us as older guys who really love campaigns and multiplayer.
Oh, these kids today.
But if it's hard that way, it will help their long-term plans for adding content and keeping supporting the game.
Yeah, and Jesse, actually, that's a really good point. And one of the reasons I didn't mention too much about that, I think that's going to be a pretty big topic on some of our upcoming shows, especially when we can incorporate incorporate Sick into the conversation there.
Oh
But
yes, he's going to be the Mr. Forge for us.
so yeah, I don't want to go too far down there, but I agree with you. I think that is probably one of the wild cards, or one of the most underrated aspects of what's going to be coming up, and one of the more important things. So it's going to be exciting to see how they innovate there. But so I think the good answers to that question. Let's move on to J Next Gen. He asks, I wonder if we can play mouse and keyboard on Series X with Halo Infinite. I don't know that they've confirmed either way. Have
They haven't, but they've put it into the console version of Master Chief Collection, which again makes it feel like a test bed where, that probably would be something, and they'll do the Modern Warfare. You can set if you want to play with other people with anything, or if you only want to play with a controller.
Hey, OBM, we actually missed the question from Mort. It was, we were talking about using cams. And he asked if we're going to use the baby cam.
Yeah. Our faces aren't ready, and then yes, Proven will use the baby cam.
Probably sound better.
But yeah. So for the mouse and keyboard, I think we would expect it. Like you guys already said, it even in the PC version, you can choose a toggle between the controller and the mouse and keyboard. So hopefully like that even allows it. They can hopefully monitor cheaters, but allow us to be cross-play with PC guys, our PC friends that are using controllers. And
yeah, I mean, everything with MCC is kind of a test bed, and it seems like they're building in that ability to filter out between gamepad and keyboard and mouse on console already.
Yeah, they've got it in
CSE,
so and plus their anti-cheat's pretty good. I haven't heard near as many complaints as I have with a lot of games on PC.
Yeah.
All right, so let's see. What is the next question we got here?
I think
pineapple on pizza.
Yes. Well, if it's barbecue
sauce. This is mostly people complaining about your gameplay here, Mike. Let me get past all that.
Yeah, I don't get that.
Is the next question?
I'm a freaking pro in this.
It says, do you feel the team going back and understanding what Halo was trying to be with the OG trilogy is something that was missing from 4 or 5's development? I think we talked about that some, but go ahead and elaborate, Jesse.
So whenever this happens with their questions in the main podcast, Nick will go, I think we covered that. Yeah. Next question.
All right. Do you want to add anything to what we said before on that?
No, I think they're definitely, and I know Mike thinks I'm saying they're paying lip service, and I'm not. I'm saying I think they are making it clear that they understand what people want while making a new evolution of what Halo can be. So it's like we want to touch on things that we think really matter fundamentally while giving them a modern twist in a way we can, thanks to newer hardware and these ideas and this time that we have. So yeah, I think it's a huge part of going back more than 4 and especially 5's campaign did.
I mean, kind of like what I think Jesse said earlier about just being able to go around in an open world or open hub area. I mean, it's
that ideal of what we wanted in CE when we played it. More of, we wanted bigger areas that we could really explore and find.
Like the Halo level, literally the Halo level. Mm-hmm. You take that, but with modern hardware, and
you can go off the ring. That alone is something I always wanted in a Halo game. Where it's like, I'm on this ring and it's enormous, but now with this one, okay, there's a big chunk missing. I can just fall off into space or knock someone off. Like just simple things that long-term Halo fans always wanted, but we never got.
Yeah. Now, and again, and we touched on this a bunch of times already, so I won't repeat too much of it. But it does sound like they're moving forward. It's not going to be exactly the classic gameplay, but it is going to be made with the understanding of what made the classic gameplay great. So, and I think that's really their only chance if they're going to try to thread this needle. It's and then it's not a task that any of us thinks is going to be easy. So I do think they had the right mindset going through that. And all right, so I think that we kind of covered that one pretty well. let's go on to Jay Next Gen's question. He says, what game mode would you like to see return in Infinite? Warzone, Invasion, or for example?
Well, he actually asked another question before that.
Oh, did he? Oh, yeah. Sorry, I got distracted by your gameplay again. What would you want from expanded media to be in Halo Infinite? To be in Halo Infinite, character story, etc.
Yeah, some of the Halo Wars 2 stuff would be really cool. They're bringing in the main antagonists from that. So if there's at some point something happens with the Cutter and his crew, I don't expect it. With how it's more of like a solo chief finding people story, though it could at some point, I think, pull in more of that stuff, and hopefully they introduce them well, because Halo Wars 2 was decently successful, but it's definitely something you would need to have a good intro for.
Yeah,
agreed.
I think for me, like with the expanded stuff, we've talked about this in previous shows too, but there's a lot of underdeveloped characters. So either they develop them or they kill them off, which I think there's just really going to be some opportunity to just do more to develop some of these other team members.
You take Roland from Infinity, and you take the AI from the Halo Wars 2 ship, and you make them kiss.
You know what I do want to see? So we all listened to the what was that? What were you saying, Mike? You trying to
Nothing. I'm trying to hold back my laughter. Go on. I'm sorry. Go on. I'm trying not to. Like, what the fuck?
So you remember the what was the podcast that led up to the release of Halo 5, the story one?
Discover the Truth or whatever it was.
I would love for them to do something with that, because that was actually a really, really neat story. I don't know what you did with that. Yeah, Hunt the Truth. So like just bringing in something that ties into that in an interesting way. There is a really cool expanded universe, and I think part of the complaint's always been that a lot of it exists kind of on its own. So I think fleshing some of it out in terms of games, in terms of spin-offs would be a neat opportunity with the DLC in the future.
What?
So that's. Oh, go ahead.
What I'd like to, with the expanded stuff is give it proper context or explanation for people that haven't read everything. Like I don't mind them. One of my issues, and I think a lot of other people that I've seen complaints on the internet, was that they, in the past, have relied too much on the expanded fiction. And I get that, like, you want people to be completely absorbed in your universe and you want to sell books. Basically, really, let's be honest, that's what it comes down to. They want people to buy into this expanded merchandise. And that's fine and dandy, but it shouldn't come at the cost of the people that play the game, like, completely understanding what is what. And so I like the idea of them incorporating stuff of the expanded fiction. I just want there to be an actual proper, like, backstory explanation for things for people that haven't read all the books. Because, like with Halo 4, I had to go to a wiki to know, like, what the hell is, what's the other didact? There's a rudder. ISO. Yeah. Because I'm seeing people question on forums, is this the real didact or the ISO didact? And I'm like, what? Like, what? And then, the librarian and the relation, like, it just, and I know some of that is explained in the
terminal videos.
In the terminals, but like,
you can miss those, and plus people just don't want to watch them sometimes.
Well, and I don't mind watching them. I like watching them. I love it. I love absorbing everything when it comes to the universe. I don't want to have to go to a wiki to get the real details. And it just, one of the there is kind of a like Halo CE does have a strength in the terms of less is more. And Halo 2, they greatly expanded the universe, but they didn't really alienate anyone that just played the games. You were still able to follow along.
They also had a longer campaign, and they didn't rely on like Halo 3's biggest fault, in my opinion, was that they tried to start introducing some of that stuff in the terminals, but it was so vague.
Oh yeah.
And if you didn't read the books, you didn't know a damn thing. At least in Halo 4, you didn't have to read the books. If you watched the terminal videos, you kind of got the gist of the Forerunner. You got the gist of the librarian and the didact. If you found
them all.
Right. Like that's what I'm saying. Like Halo 2, I think, did the best at bringing in additional lore and making it mandatory.
Yeah.
That's really the only way to get those elements across, is to make that content mandatory, so that you don't have to hunt. Like if you want to get additional side character pieces, or backstory and things like that, you can still find those terminals. But 2 did it the best in terms of making you understand what was happening. And Reach and to some extent did the same. So I'm hoping that they kind of go back to that level, where the terminals are supplementary but meaningful, not in the way that 3s were. I mean, because 3s were meaningful if you knew the other content, but they need to be meaningful without having that. Like they need to provide that context there, so you don't have to go to a wiki, so you don't have to read the books. I think if that's kind of what you're trying to say, Mike, that I totally agree, and I hope that they bring in. Obviously, my biggest thing was I was hoping they'd bring in Atriox, and obviously they are.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
And maybe
and
the primordial.
and to be
Well,
clear,
and I
that's
think-
not.
I think what he was asking too, though, so as they do this, so I think we all kind of agree with that aspect. But like in terms of like, is there any particular side stories that you'd want them to focus on, or expanded universe things that you'd like to see in future DLCs, like characters?
Yeah, I was saying the primordial. I mean that
Yeah.
and the banished and how they intertwine with, because we're going to get the flood again because
Yeah.
of the events of Halo Wars 2, which is part of that expanded universe. Like that is what I've been wanting to see, and it's perfect that we're going to get it. And I'm hoping that we get some of the primordial.
That's what I'm actually hoping that they dive into. Like, I wonder how they're going to handle that. The stuff like the Palace of Pain, the Primordial,
yeah.
stuff like that. Like,
It's really exciting.
Are they going to make that a critical part of the main campaign, or are they going to make that a side thing, or are they going to keep that stuff for like expansions? I mean,
I think they would have to, because of what happens in the Awakening the Nightmare DLC in Halo Wars 2.
Wait, they would have to what? I said like 3 things.
That they would have to, that the primordial, the flood, all that Palace of Pain as well intertwines into those elements. So I think they'd have to make it part of the main campaign.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. Like, we know that there's going to be the flood in Infinite. There has to be. I mean, that teaser pretty much guaranteed it. I just I don't know. Like, there's a lot of exciting possibilities there. When it comes to the expanded fiction, I would like Buck to come back, but I know that's not possible. He's
married.
Yeah, he's settled down, and what is he, like, on a ranch or something now? But
with Trisha Helfer. I mean, come on.
Are you saying he can't come back from that? I mean, they flip the universe, all the damn time. He can come back from
They can bring people back, but that was definitely we're breaking up Osiris because it's just going to be cheap moving forward in the games.
Okay. Well, we'll see.
And Nathan Fillion was too expensive.
I'm just a Nathan Fillion fan, so I'm not gonna even hide that.
At least they didn't kill him like they did in Destiny.
Yeah. So they always have the option to bring him back. All right, so we'll have to move on here, and once again, chat, we appreciate these questions, and we appreciate the fact that you're giving Mike shit for
for playing bad.
Next time we have gameplay footage of Mike. Well, we should just have like some circus music in the background.
Hey, didn't we record all that? We were playing ODST with him, and he was just like going the opposite way every time.
I like to explore.
This is not an open world game. All right, so yeah, let's move on to the next question. Yeah, bald. I like that bald move, Mike.
I know. It took me everything. That's another one of those things that came by that took everything in me not to laugh. I just want you to know that. Well played.
We've got we've got a question on the XboxEra forums.
And we got from Twitter too. But did we want to finish out the chat real quick, or do we want to move on to?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's get through these chat ones. So he says, "Will there be, or let's see, what game mode would you like to see return in the Infinite, Warzone, or Invasion, for example? Anything anything that was Infinite specific that you want to see back that's not part of the core Halo? Or I'm sorry, the Halo 5.
Invasion. I'd like to see them do another take on that was the Reach mode, right? I would love for them to. I mean, granted, we already know that's not going to happen at launch, at least because elites aren't in the multiplayer. But if they did bring back elites, I would really like to see them. And I think I mentioned this in a previous Halo in a previous podcast. Halo or Killzone 2's Warzone, I think it was called. It would be an excellent take that kind of concept and expand it, like take advantage of today's hardware and just make this competitive type elite versus Spartan, but have like objectives that are more complex than sitting within a bubble until a bar fills up. Like,
yeah, I might be in a minority here. I mean, outside of the core modes, your big team battles, your arena stuff, I'm looking forward to them taking this taking the new technology and well, and I guess there's going to be some limitations with the Xbox One initially, but I do want to see them, especially with some of the cloud options they'll have, like that where they can offload some of the stuff. I want to just see them take some chances, try to be innovative again, and we've heard inklings that they will be. So I'm not really stuck on Warzone. I feel like Warzone was a good concept, but it's not something that in its current form needs to stay. It might be something that they could use to take some takeaways, right, in terms of like using NPCs and stuff and game modes. But in general, outside of the core stuff, and I spend most of my time doing 4v4, and then occasionally I'll get in the Forge stuff. But what I'm really looking forward to is seeing what new things they can come up with. And there is new technologies, even like I said, even playing off Xbox Ones, that there's new things they can do with the cloud. So that's where I'm at on that. Anybody else have anything they want to add on that one before we kind of move to some other questions?
Yeah, I agree with Mike. I've always loved Invasion, even though it was now it's pretty simplistic. I'd love to return like an evolved version of that, but I'm a huge sucker for firefight. So
yeah,
if we can
if
we can get a Warzone firefight or something,
I just assumed that would return.
Yeah,
I hope so. It
feels pretty core now.
Yeah, and I have to interject too. You're saying about the Xbox One. Not if they cancel it.
Yeah,
but that ship has sailed. So
they are going to. I do wonder what they're going to add or how it's going to evolve when they do eventually sunset Xbox One support, because that is going to happen.
That's going to happen. Yeah, it's going to be like the Destiny Iron Wolves.
Yeah.
It's just going to be like that all over again, which is fine.
And that's fine. You can have modes that are just only available to you when I mean, heck, there's modes that are only available to us because Sony money hats the other ones. So, so we can deal. Xbox One owners can deal with that if they still have it a couple years from now. Will there be any DLC in the future? If so, will it include new armor sets, campaign modes? I'd say yes to almost everything.
Without a doubt.
I mean, they already outside of the species. I think they already they didn't confirm the campaign, but that's almost a given. They're not going to have the same campaign for, I guess, 10 years.
Right.
But yeah, everything else is pretty much already confirmed, I would say.
And that wouldn't be totally. I mean, if you're talking over 10 years, I wouldn't be shocked if a species entered it either. But that's probably the only that's probably the only questionable one on there. But
and they talked about how the system was made was so they could add more content more quickly without having baked in lighting and all these things that take forever to render.
Yeah,
it's about quickly iterating and getting new stuff in, both content wise and graphically for adding in skins, and they probably got an entire long plan of seasons and adding everything in for that. So
as far as content's concerned,
it's going to be a living game.
Yep.
All right, cool. Yeah, I think we all agree there. So let's. We had a question from the forum. It says, "How do you guys feel about adding some light RTS gameplay to the campaign, with what's been said and seen of the campaign, it seems like there will be a bit of finding missing personnel and lost assets. I would love to be able to have a hand in how those assets are deployed on the battlefield before a mission. Not every mission, but it cuts off here. But maybe. Hold on.
Where did it cut off for you? I've got it open.
Okay, yeah, go ahead and read the rest of it.
It's like not every mission, maybe for the raids they've mentioned, and strictly for the planning phase. Not as much as I love Brutal Legend, the RTS part was messy and slowed down the gameplay. Is this bridge too far, or can Halo benefit from giving the player this much control over how a combat scenario plays out? That question came from Yellow Tango. Extremely light. Yeah, I would say extremely light RPG stuff. Not anything where you're like going to a different camera. But yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say what was that new game from that was killed like 3 months after it came out from one of the original
Disintegration.
Creators? Yes, Disintegration. Hard pass.
Yeah.
I think every major Halo fan, like when you and I play Halo Wars, Jesse, yeah, but most Halo fans don't, and I think that trying to switch the genre mid-game, I think is a bad idea.
Yeah.
Well, I think I get what he
maybe a few choices for a combat scenario. Like, what
You
type
mean
of
like
vehicle
commanding
do you
your
want?
team to go over here like you did in Halo
Well,
5?
I took that as like, because there's going to be moments in the campaign where you have to rescue troops, right? I took his idea as you can send those troops to liberate or free a outpost, for example. If that's what he's talking about, I can't really say I'm still a fan. Like the furthest that I would like for them to take it is, so they already talked about how you're able to, I guess, unlock or liberate outposts and stuff that are taken over by the Fallen, and then let those the Banished. Thank you. But let those Marines, I guess, post up at those outposts, and then give me the option to say follow me or stay here. Outside of that, I don't really know if that fits Halo. And the only reason I even think that the follow me or stay here thing fits is because you look at, like older Halo games or even newer ones where they jump in your vehicle, like that's kind of the next evolution that makes sense to me.
I just think they need to have good. I think it just needs to have good AI, and that's it. Because honestly, it sounds good, and I know where he's probably going to, because there is times where you're playing the game, and even in the classics that we all love on Legendary, your AI just does dumb shit.
It takes 9 years to enter a vehicle.
Yeah, or you're just like, hey, I'm trying to keep my crew alive. Why don't you guys just stand back there and let me take this so you guys can stay alive, so this mission isn't all a waste because you're all dead by the time I rescue you. So I get that, but at the same time, really, for it to be intuitive and fun, you really don't want to have to think about that. I think they just need to make the AI good enough that you don't feel like you
don't think about it.
Yeah, that's really all it is. I get what he's saying, though. Sometimes you feel like it'd be nice to be able to give them some command or say, go over here and distract these guys while I, go over here and, I don't know, try to circle them or, flank them or something like that. But at the end of the day, one of the things is I think you want to try to limit the amount of
babysitting.
Yeah, just the overall things you're doing. You
don't want to be the third player that gets the buck AI driving you down the highway.
Yeah. Or won't shoot even though he's in the gunner seat or the the turret.
Not referencing anything.
Yeah.
That ODST section was awful near the end. That almost did ruin the game. But anyways, so that's kind of my answer on that. Let's see. Did we have any other questions? You said you had one from Twitter as well?
Yeah. I posted it in the... So it's... I can pull it up real quick and read it out. So Anthony Suker, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, says, how much do you think Halo Infinite will dip into the Halo Wars 2 storyline? Will we see Captain Cutter and company and fighting alongside them, or are we gonna be sticking with the Halo 5 storyline and trying to stop Cortana? Bit of both. Keep up the good work, by the way. Thank you.
I would say we're probably the only parts of Halo Wars 2 story that we're going to get are the Banished. I don't think any of those other characters are going to come, at least not in the vanilla experience.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're going to try to keep it simple for now.
I mean, I think they are going to reference, if not directly tie in. Well, no, we know Cortana's directly tied in because she's in the trailers. So,
right, but that's not Halo Wars 2 stuff. I mean, that's.
Well, I know, but
Cortana.
I'm going based on his question because he's talking about, are we just going to stick with Halo 5 storyline and trying to stop Cortana? So, basically, I'm saying, yeah, it's gonna be like you said. It's not going to be so much Halo Wars 2, mostly Cortana's thing, and then the Banished.
One question I did miss, I think this would be a quick one. He says, do you think areas might be something like in Outriders? I would say no.
No, it's Metro Exodus is what you should think of if you're thinking of how
Yeah.
And I don't even think that. I mean, we'll get an idea here soon.
They're going to be bigger, I think, and they're going to be more vertical. I think overall they'll be much better than I thought Metro Exodus's areas were actually kind of crappy. Really hard to see where you're going or what to do. The map sucked. But that style of hubbed off open world where you're jumping between areas. I think Outriders is very 360 PS4.
Yeah, very level based.
I mean, Outriders is a really fun game, but it is a 360 game at its core. Like almost everything.
Really fun. It's the top rung of the B tier.
Yeah, it's definitely not on that level. I'm actually thinking, and they've already I think described this a little bit in some of the updates, but I think what you saw in Silent Cartographer is probably what you should be kind of picturing, except just taken to another level. So, with more verticality, wider levels. But that's what you should be thinking of, like just kind of going inside and outside of things. It does feel connected, yet it's not going to be a fully open world game. So it's going to be some, obviously some wide rails on what you're running through. But that's my impression of how the game's going to be laid out. But they haven't been super specific on it, but I do remember them mentioning something about the Silent Cartographer having some different paths you could choose. That those things have been a focus in some of the recent updates.
If you called me crazy, I'd think you were describing Metro Exodus.
No, those open areas of Metro Exodus were not very good. So
I think the key difference,
the concept of it, where you've got bespoke areas within a section of a map. In like each area is like its own small open world map, very small compared to something like Assassin's Creed or whatnot.
Yeah, each a separate sandbox. I mean, it's two sides of the same coin. I think the key difference between something like Metro Exodus and the Silent Cartographer is the design of the objectives. And I get what you're saying, Jesse, that because that's the one key area that I really hope Halo Infinite does a lot better than Exodus in the sense that like the side stuff in Exodus was just very simplistic.
I have found teddy bear girl.
Yes, that's exactly the mission I was thinking of. It's like literally a fetch quest, and I'm hoping
they tied the ending into where you had to do all these fetch quests in really boring areas, or else you got the shitty ending.
What? Oh, I didn't beat the. Okay.
So
there's a moral system that's in all of them anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then I guess now I know. But yeah, it's so. But yeah, like that's and I'm not gonna lie, it is kind of concerning where in the demo we did see a I'm assuming it's a side thing where it was like assassinate a Promethean Knight or something. Like I'm hoping stuff like that isn't so dry or I guess watered down, for lack of better expression, than just go here and kill this knight.
Yeah, with those side things, I am really wondering when you're in each area and you've got a hub, it really sounds like you're going to have some sort of hub for that area where the pilot is, or maybe eventually Cortana and like your base for each area. Doing the side stuff, does that unlock you being able to do, I get these weapons in my hub, I get these vehicles in my hub, I've got like some very light RPG stuff that hasn't really ever been in Halo before, because they have this open world, like open areas, and a reason to do those side things would be to get more resources for following the main path.
Do you want that?
Yes,
Oh.
absolutely. Any reason that gives me more reason to play the Halo campaign outside of just the golden path, because if you don't want that, you can just go and play the main missions. They've said that. But I want the option.
It's going to be
do
side stuff.
I'm fine with that. Like, my only concern is I hope that doesn't dilute the design of the main stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like
they've
that,
said
if
they're
they can
definitely not wanting that. They want they build these big areas, but then when you go into a mission, you're on a Halo mission. They've said they wanted that feeling. So yeah, do they hit on that or not?
Yeah.
Hey guys, we also had one more question from the forum.
Okay.
Too late.
This is actually the first question that we got. It was from 2 hours ago. So Big Z asked, I have one for the podcast. When I read about Halo Infinite, I personally don't see much mention about Firefight. My question, therefore, is do you think it will be in the game? And if so, what changes, improvements would you like to see? As always, keep up the great work. Thanks, Big Z. We kind of touched on this already with, I think we all are at least hoping that Firefight will be in Infinite. But what changes or improvements would you guys like to see? I mean, that's the key difference here, I think, in this question.
I think being able to make your own Firefight in Forge, and
Yeah.
it's definite. That really has read to me what the changes to Forge sound like, are being able to make modes like Firefight.
Yeah. Am I the only one here that thought?
Yes.
Probably.
Okay.
I mean, you're alone in your house, so I just say.
I thought
Actually, I'm there too.
The calls are coming from inside the house. All right, keep going.
I thought Firefight was better in ODST than it was in Reach.
I
It
agree.
was.
I agree. I think ODSTs is the best Firefight.
And I don't know if that was a less is more thing. I don't know if that was the fact that it was too easy in Reach, or that, I think initially every mode in Reach Firefight had an ending, whereas ODST kind of appealed to that arcade mentality, that classic arcade mentality, where you were just getting the highest score or the highest level. So, it
Basically, I want a Halo version of like a Halo Geometry Wars mashup. You just keep playing until you can't play anymore.
Yeah, and give the
Yeah.
option for that, because Reach eventually gave that option, but it still never felt the same or was as fun.
Right, because you were a Spartan, whereas when you were an ODST, you were so fragile, and just, when you'd have those bonus rounds when they throw grunts at you, like, it was actually dangerous. Like, that's that kind of like what OBM was saying. Like, just imagine where it's just in, like, especially with the new horsepower, just imagine more and more, enemies that they throw at you
500
at the
grunts.
same time. Yeah, 500 grunts.
Eventually, it's going to look just like Geometry. You're just going to be trying to like weave in and out of
Well,
those
they'll have
guys.
Grunt birthday party on. You get like a couple of headshots, and your entire screen is confetti.
Did they ever do that in Reach, where they just rain down a boatload of grunts on you?
Yeah, there was an entire Firefight mode called Gruntpocalypse, which is the one I played by far the most, which was nothing but grunts and nothing but Grunt birthday party, and I played for hours nonstop.
Yeah, I do hope they bring that back. And that's really what's one of the most disappointing aspects of Halo 5's multiplayer is the firefight. I don't care for
Warzone.
Well, and I guess also you mix in all the wrecks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I didn't care.
Yeah,
for
It was
Warzone
just a
Firefight
different
could be very
beast.
fun.
Yeah,
but it was very, very. You die in a split second if they look at you, because there's 8 of you, and you just have to keep calling out vehicles, or else you're just going to die.
And the levels were too damn big.
Yeah, I want 4 players. Just get crazy.
in an arena.
Yeah.
Yeah,
make it an arena.
Warzone.
Yep.
Yeah, Warzone was fine, but it was no replacement to Firefight.
Now, if we got both, that would be cool. But
Yeah.
Firefight's better.
What
Yeah.
if they had a new mode called Left for Flood, and it was 4 Spartans, and you're trying to survive
Oh my
against the
God.
flood with no armor?
No, just
What? What?
Instead of
You
Left
might as
4
well be
Dead, it's Left for
ODST
Flood.
then.
No, but you're still super strong, so you can punch them, and it feels good.
nice.
All
You got
right.
big muscles.
Guys, was that all the questions?
Uh,
We are now at 2 hours. Holy crap. For a week with no news. So
It's like we like talking about this game or something.
I know. All right. Well, it's been 2 hours, and I think it's time for us to try to wrap up the show. So next show is going to be in line with the monthly update. So looking forward to
About
that.
PC.
Is it? Is that what it's
Yeah.
going to be about?
it's the
Yeah.
PC version, talking about that, so it should be real cool.
I'm
Oh,
looking forward to it.
I wouldn't be surprised if they don't have one in May with E3 so close, but we'll see.
yeah, probably.
All right. Well, yeah. Next week's show will be a lot more focused. It'll be
2 weeks from now.
2 weeks. That's what I mean. Yeah, in 2 weeks, we'll have a much more focused show. Appreciate all the questions and the interaction from the chat. By the way, I think I rudely forgot to mention all the people that were sending us questions. So thanks to Jay Next Gen. Thanks to
You got most.
Jackson Mortain. Yeah. So anyways, if I missed your name, I do apologize. So thanks for joining us and sticking with us for the 2 hour Halo podcast.
And the chances are we might be on video next time.
Yeah. if
Here's
our
hoping.
Our faces will be more ready. We'll
Which
try to-
also might be the 29th if the blog post goes up and we're able to do it that night.
Okay.
Hell yeah.
All right. Wrap up. We don't have Saul. He's usually our closer. Who wants to be our closer today?
Sure. As always, thanks for everybody for listening. Like, subscribe. We do have a Patreon page that's part of our XboxEra parent. So please take a look at that if you like what we do and you'd like to help us out. We always look forward to it. And thanks as always. This has been You Had Me at Halo.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Goodbye to all my
Bye.
friends.